This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Okay, so normally I like giving you a shout out, but you get, we can talk about comments at the end, but our midweek, which you got the appropriate props for, people talked about the content and they talked about what the midweek was with. That the best part of the midweek.
Sorry, you froze up there for a second. The midweek was with Ashley Banfield. I'm not sure if that came through on the recording, but yeah, the midweek. Go ahead.
Right. And for my money, the most incredible thing was your title, your naming of the midweek. Do you remember what that was?
I mean, I do. I've been told I have a bit of a knack for naming and titles. It's certainly something some of my friends have commented on. I thought it was the obvious title. I don't know. I mean, Uncle Peter with Ashley Banfield.
Okay, so Uncle Peter, and we don't have to get.
By the way, not my title. I'm stealing something from the guest. That's what she said.
Yeah, but the way you did it on the headline, I thought was masterful.
Well, look, I mean, this is a clickbait world, like it or not. I want people to watch our YouTube videos, youtube.com/reasonable doubt podcast. Go subscribe if you're not. But, you gotta put the stuff up there. I don't know if you saw the thumbnail, but that was also not unintentional. You got to get people interested.
So it made me think this week about another legal story. Do you know which legal story I'm talking about? Just this morning made me think about it.
Well, I mean, we've certainly got the ASAP Rocky case. I'm not sure if that's the one
I want to talk about it in a second, but no, I'm talking.
Yeah, this is going to be tough. Your internet connection is really rough there, Mark. I'm not sure if you can even hear me at the moment, but I certainly can't hear you. So,
let's see.
Okay, now your internet's back, but we had about 20, 30 seconds of silence there where I couldn't hear you. So I'm not sure what legal story you were talking about. I teased ASAP Rocky, but you said you wanted to talk about, and then you froze up.
I want to talk about the state senator from Mississippi.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Contraception, right. Contraception starts at erection. Is that the case in question?
Exactly. And there's, which by the way, it does provoke some laughter, at least over here on this side of the frozen tundra.
Yeah.
But there is a logic to the if you're going to go back, when does life begin and when does and you've got to go down the continuum. I guess this is when the erection happens. Is the logical parade of, as my law school professor used to say, parade of horribles.
I don't know, Mark. You used the word logical 3 times there, and I think that's 3 times too many. I mean, if contraception starts at erection, then life ends at 13 when you're incarcerated in a federal prison. I mean, I don't know. Whatever. Yeah.
I think I'm kidding, though. This is a bill.
I'm aware. I'm aware it's a bill. And look, you sent me the article and I fired back pretty quickly with a picture because that's something that's been bandied about by me and my friends. So I didn't have to search far and wide for that picture that I shot back to you, which I admittedly stole from TMZ. But that was the picture that they used of a questionable person holding a bill that had the clever naming title on it. Yeah, that's you keep saying logical. For me, it's a bit of a stretch.
Okay. Got it. Well, speaking of a bit of a stretch, there was a judge this week who on the birthright citizenship, he enjoined the executive order. And I believe his retort was, when he was enjoining it, is, where were all the lawyers when somebody said this was a good idea, and then enjoined the executive order issued by the president for that. President's been busy this week. Besides the executive orders, there's been some, speaking of logic, there's been some joint appearances with the mayor, Karen Bass, that are just gold, frankly.
Yeah, Andy saw our governor at the airport. I saw, one thing I was interested in, and it was harder to to search on the internet than it really should be. I'm hearkening back to my former boss and your friend Adam Carolla, who always complained that things on the internet were harder to find than they should be. I was trying to discern, has any executive ever had this many pardons and commutations in such a short period in their term? I looked it up, and it turns out that President Biden issued more pardons and commutations than any past president by a factor of over 1,000. But I couldn't quite discern, the time period. But to your knowledge, has any executive ever issued this many pardons this quickly in their term?
At the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been 1,500 pardons in 4 days.
Yeah, I do not remember anything. But then again, as you said, there was nothing like at the end of the term. That's a whole different bag of worms that I wasn't even going to get into. But yeah, we can talk about that as well. That was, that's interesting. I mean, yes, Trump's 1,500 in the first day or two, and Biden, 15 or so in the last 20 minutes. It's quite a dichotomy. We've entered a whole new era. I'll tell you, it's something. And where the executive people said, keep that, the executives over here, the judiciary's over here. There's been kind of a melding. Speaking of judiciary and melding, you had mentioned ASAP Rocky. You want to talk about that case for a sec? Because then there's been a couple of things as we record this on the weekend that I wanted to kind of talk about for a minute. Yeah,
ASAP Rocky was arrested. I believe it was sometime in the last year and a half or so. And some video came out, some security camera video of him having an altercation with another member of his ASAP crew, where he pulls a gun and threatens the person and allegedly fires shots, not at the person, but in a threatening way. And he was arrested for that and charged with gun charges and charged with criminal threats, I believe. And the DA in Los Angeles offered him a plea deal that I believe would have seen him serve about 180 days in jail and 7 years probation.
Suspended
sentence. Yeah, right. Yeah, correct.
So the DA who's trying this case, one of the two DAs, you may remember, Gary, is a guy by the name of John Lewin.
Yeah.
We had him on Reasonable Doubt. He was a guest because John had prosecuted the Durst case. John made an offer. I'm not so sure, and I have not talked to John. I have not talked to Joe Tacopina, but
Joe Tacopina being ASAP's defense attorney.
Who was also the president's.
Yeah,
defense
absolutely.
Attorney. And somebody may remember that the president, I believe, interceded when ASAP Rocky was being held in custody once before. And I think speaking of pardons, may have pardoned him back then. I don't know. You might want to take a look while I'm talking.
Yeah, I'm not positive. He's certainly been involved with so many different rappers' cases and has.
Yeah, I think that he did on another case. But in this case, what's been reported is that the offer was plead, get 180 days in county jail, and have state prison 7 years suspended. Now, the defense, if you believe what's being reported, like I say, I always say that with a caveat, have rejected it because they said they weren't going to have this following them around for 8 years. I don't know that that was accurate, and I'm not saying that the defense was wrong. I don't know that the quote was right, because like I said, I haven't talked to either one, but I believe the interpretation is this. The 180 days county jail means that he would do virtually no time at all in county jail here in Los Angeles. Normally, a 180-day sentence would be a small fraction of that.
Just a few weeks, yeah.
Yeah. And that's number one. Number two, the state prison suspended. The reason they have state prison suspended is, number one, so that it would block the mechanism at the end of the probation from you having it reduced to a misdemeanor from a felony, because presumably he's being offered what's called a wobbler, which could be a felony or a misdemeanor. And the idea would be that if you have a state prison suspended, you could not reduce it to a misdemeanor. Having said that, I have on many an occasion worked out plea deals where you can have a state prison suspended. However, you can have an agreement with the DA to agree that they will not oppose the withdrawal of the state prison suspended before the end of the term, so that if you perform admirably on probation, that you can have the matter reduced to a misdemeanor and then expunged for purposes of what he would need. I understand the concern about ruining his career, because it is something when you've got what's called the state prison suspended gives you a straight felony which has to be disclosed every time you tour, go into a foreign country. And we just were talking about when he was in a foreign country. A lot of countries will not allow you in. Canada, until it becomes a 51st state, would not allow you in. The UK is notorious for not allowing you in with a violent felony conviction, straight felony conviction that has not been reduced.
Well, yeah, our president's going to have a hard time traveling internationally now that he's a convicted felon. I mean, we've talked about that before.
Yeah. So there's,
I looked it up while you were talking, by the way. You're referring to the case where ASAP was held in Sweden over an altercation with a fan, or, presumably a fan who was hounding him for an autograph, and they got into it, and Trump interceded and gotten into the international community and spoke with Sweden and got him released. I don't believe he was issued a pardon, but Trump definitely did intervene and helped get his release and secured his return to the U.S.
I remember vaguely at the time that it was at Melania's either nudging or insistence. So
yeah, I think she was involved. That
was before Barron. It was before Barron had a large part in the culture and the
a large part. I mean, he's only 13 feet tall based on some of the videos I've seen on Instagram. So large part is putting it mildly.
Yeah, but has anybody ever seen you and Barron in the same room?
I mean, I don't know. His eyes are a little bit less droopy than mine, but who's counting?
We got a couple other stories that I want. And so anyway, I didn't even talk about what I thought was the thing that triggered A$AP Rocky. So they reject the plea agreement. Like I said, I'm not so sure that if it's being reported accurately, that there wasn't a way to massage the offer so that he could have taken it and he would have it would have impacted him for a number of months, but he's had this case pending for, as you said, well over a year. So I think there was a way to thread that needle. Why do I say that? Because it struck me at the time that leave it to the LAPD and the culture here that, my father used to say that DDA, which presumably stands for Deputy District Attorney, should really stand for just the delayed discovery agent. And sure enough, what came either right on the heels of or right before the opening statement where Joe Tacopina was going to and did make the argument that it was a prop gun, that 2 shots were fired. There were no casings that were found at the time, that there were 7 officers who searched, and he was going to embrace the LAPD, that what a great job they did on the search. And that it was only later when the purported complaining witness / victim came that these casings were found.
Yeah, he and his girlfriend went back and searched the scene and found the casings. That's
right.
Okay.
Which is, right. Well, the problem was LAPD produced a ballistics report apparently yesterday, Friday, in temporally surrounding the time of the opening statement. And Tacopina asked for more time, which he is entitled to, clearly. Judge was having none of it and made him proceed. And the judge, I don't know, pun intended, said it was not a smoking gun, that the ballistic report.
That's good.
Yeah. This judge is something. Mark Arnold, I have not appeared in front of him recently, but I tried a murder case that ended in a hung jury. Cam Brown, 20 years ago, back when Judge Arnold was in the South Bay. In fact, I did talk to the prosecutor in that case, very able prosecutor, recently, which reminded me of the fact I had not seen Judge Arnold, didn't even frankly know he was sitting in the CCB.
Yeah, that defense, the prop gun defense, is something that it seemed to really stun the prosecution. They did not see that coming, and I believe they raised a bunch of red flags and complained that was not something that they were prepared for as well.
Yeah, I take the position that you're not supposed to, as a defense lawyer, preview your defense to the prosecution. Yeah. However, the prosecution does have a duty to give you and preview, so to speak, their discovery. And some of their discovery should be if they're sitting on a ballistics report, or they've got a ballistics report and it's been a year and a half, presumably, that they've had possession of the supposed bullets, and the bullets were consistent, which I believe the ballistics report suggested of a not being fired from a 9mm subset of a Glock, that should have been disclosed well in advance of picking a jury, needless to say, and obviously should have been disclosed before the opening statement. So to me, that's a no-brainer, but apparently His Honor did not agree.
Yeah, His Honor certainly did not agree. And there's another weird twist to this case that I don't know if you saw, but the first witness was a police officer who is, as it turns out, the son of Tom Girardi's ex-wife, Erica Jane. So there's a Real Housewife connection to this case as well. And it's just, every time I think that...
You only knew that because of your own wife.
I only knew that because I spend too much time surfing TMZ. My own wife is not interested in this case, so she actually did not alert me to it. But
this case is, it's interesting to me, but it really has not. It hasn't permeated or supersized the way a lot of these other cases have.
It really hasn't caught the zeitgeist, especially when you consider the Rihanna connection here, which apparently the jury was questioned about, and they were asked if you buy Fenty products and all of this stuff. But you would think with one of the biggest pop stars in the world that this would be something everyone's talking about. But while I knew that I would be talking about it with you, my wife hasn't mentioned this case once. I mean, this is not something that is really in her orbit yet. I would imagine it will be as the case goes on, but this has somewhat been restricted to the legal nerds and the people that are surfing TMZ because, it's local and they're covering it as a result.
Yeah, it really has not. It has not captured the fancy. And one of the other interesting issues here was that a jury was seated, and ASAP is African-American. Rihanna is a woman of color. And there were zero, as I understand it, people of color on this jury, which is mind-boggling to me in the Clara Shortridge Foltz courthouse. As you have seen, Gary, you're with your own eyes recently, a veneer that is called and a panel that is called in that courthouse invariably reflects the community. To have zero people of color sitting in that jury is not even close to reflecting the community.
Yeah, I believe the defense complained about that, and I believe they pointed out that the pool of potential jurors only represented 3% people of color, and they were complaining that the community itself represents at least 9%, and they said that was not representative, and the judge once again was not interested and shut them down.
Yeah, I've litigated this issue in the past. There are a number of hurdles that you have to get to, and in LA County, what I have found, and in litigating this, that sometimes this happens because when there is self-selection, when you show up to the jury assembly room and you give excuses to get excused so that you don't have to ever even make it to the courtroom, that there is, in that first kind of funnel, that a lot of people get weeded out there who maybe shouldn't be weeded out there. It should be more once you get to the courtroom, because one of the things that judges are very attuned to is if you do these things in a group setting sometimes, that it catches like, and excuse the awful pun, like wildfire, where somebody will come up with an excuse, everybody else self-educates immediately and then realizes that excuse, and they'll concoct another excuse and this or that. So one of the things that has happened as to eliminate that is judges will kind of leave financial hardships and other kinds of hardships to be done at the jury assembly room level, and that sometimes that's self-selection, and that may be a factor in why the veneer panel that actually gets to the courtroom is not representative of the demographic population as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to build on the terrible pun, which I know you did not mean in an insensitive way, I would imagine that Wildfire was part of the excuses that were levied in the self-elimination pool for this jury, because it's certainly something that's been harbored and something that has been on the minds of Angelenos. I glanced as you were talking over to my own jury summons, which I'll just go ahead and alert you here on the show, which is maybe not the right venue, that I've got one coming up in a couple weeks. So that's fun. And here's hoping that.
Well, it better be Orange County, because you're not an LA County resident.
Yes, it is. I will be headed to the Santa Ana courthouse, which boggles the mind because I've got Fullerton about 2 miles from my house. But no, Santa Ana it is. So I'll be down there, and here's hoping that you're trying something.
You could walk to the Fullerton courthouse.
I would love to, but no, I'll be driving 20 miles south and headed to the Santa Ana courthouse. And here's hoping they don't lose power like they did during my my last jury summons, which extended the ordeal by a day and a half.
I love it. So I think we've got one more story before we go. Doing that?
You tell me. I'm certainly not going to lead into it, but I know exactly what you're going to. So go for it.
Oh, come on. I want you to lead into it. Go.
Oh, well, look, I mean, it's rude to price gouge in this environment. People have lost their homes. People have been displaced by the wildfires, and they're looking for new housing. And some people are looking to benefit off the misery of others. And I'm not a fan of that, but it's certainly something that's happening. And the DA and the state's attorney general have been very, very, very clear over the course of the past few weeks that they're not going to stand for that.
Yeah. And somebody who was the first poster child for the price gouging in LA County.
Well, I don't know. Can we call him a friend of the show? I don't think so.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he gives me dirty looks when I see him in the community, but
I wonder why.
Yeah, Mike Kobasi. Remember Mike Kobasi? Why do we remember that name, Gary?
Oh, well, I think it's because you walked over to his office and sat there in front of the office while we did a podcast. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, in my defense, that office is now Geo's in La Cañada, and I do consider that my La Cañada office. But Mike Kobasi has been charged by the Attorney General of the state of California with price gouging of. I think there was even a press conference as well. Yeah. Yeah,
I believe there was. Ron Bonta is, I believe I have that name right. And he's charging Mike with apparently having a rental listing that he submitted and a couple applied, and only to be told that the cost had gone up by, I believe it was 39%. His Mike's defense was that he changed the price after learning and ensuring that the residence in question was located in the coveted La Cañada Flint Ridge School District, which I find very thin if you're a professional real estate agent that you don't know.
When your website is
LaCañada.com.
Yes,
you don't know what school district your $9,000 a month house is located in, and that's his justification, is that he realized after the application was submitted that the house was in the coveted La Cañada school district, and that was why he raised the price. I will say Mike has been defiant on social media and has been posting about other listings he has secured for families, and saying that, he is a friend of the community and a friend of the firefighters, and that he is not price gouging, and that Rob Bonta has made a grave mistake that he will pay for. But 39% is pretty tough when it's been very publicly stated.
For those who don't remember, he had an earlier issue that actually, I think, did we get flagged on YouTube for the title of that?
Well, yes and no.
The title was Pedos and Pedestrians. Was that it?
It's been said that I have a flair for naming things. We already established that.
And that was a takeoff, by the way, on Cars and Coffee, which was something that he used to do prior to having that thing in La Cañada. So maybe Mike, Mike sponsors things. For all we know, he'll be sponsoring Reasonable Doubt shortly. To kind of, I somehow
doubt that, but let's fucking keep our fingers crossed there, Mark.
Like somebody that can make that sales call, don't you, Gary?
Yeah, sure. We have many able salespeople at EVM. Let's fly one in there and see what we can get done.
Yes, Reasonable Doubt brought to you
by LaCañada.com. Yeah, fingers crossed, Mark. Any day now.
Oh, it's a misdemeanor charge, and I imagine that.
Misdemeanor charge. Just know that when my misdemeanor charge comes, that you're defending me free of charge, sir.
Oh, Gary. Well, I think, Gary, I'm going to put the pressure on you. I think we should do a midweek. And
fuck you! You're traveling this week. You're going to put out a midweek. God damn it! We're right on the heels of actually putting out a midweek, which the comments for were absolutely hilarious. And now you're going to let that fly while you're going to be in Miami hobnobbing with God knows who, and you're throwing out a mid. Okay, Mark, midweek it is. See you then.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Good to see you.
All right, Mark. Good to see you too. Thanks for making some time this weekend. We'll see you, I don't know, Tuesday or something.
Yes, exactly.
God knows. All right. Bye, Mark.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.